Well, hey there, sweet peas. Welcome back to Friendless. I'm your host, James Avramenko, and this week I had the absolute pleasure to interview Hannah McGregor. Hannah is the co-host of the podcast Material Girls, amongst many others, and is the author of Clever Girl, the latest entry in the pop classic series that analyzes Jurassic Park as a feminist parable. The book is incredible, and Hannah was an absolute joy to interview. This was an instant favorite to record, and I think you're going to love it. So it's time to lean back, get comfy, set your volume at a reasonable level, and enjoy my interview with the one and only Hannah McGregor here on Friendless. So this week on Friendless, I have such an exciting guest. All week I've been just giddy to chat with Hannah McGregor, who is the author of my current obsession, Clever Girl, which is a analysis of Jurassic Park in the pop classic series, which is one of my favorite ongoing series, which is what kind of initially caught my eye, and then it was Jurassic Park, and then the book itself just absolutely blew my mind. And so welcome, Hannah. How the hell are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I am delighted that it is the end of my week. It's been a pretty silly week, I gotta say. It's been one of those I sure wish I wasn't an adult with so many adult jobs and responsibilities. Seems like a ripoff. But now I've got a weekend where I don't have to do a single responsible thing. Like I truly am just gonna loaf on my couch and play video games and smoke weed and eat pizza. Like it's just gonna be a dirtbag weekend, and I couldn't be more thrilled for it.
Oh my god, I'm feeling like contact joy for you for that. You know, What are you playing right now? Do you have anything loaded up? Or?
I do. I am on my second playthrough of Cult of the Lamb, which
okay.
Do you know this game?
You know, it was free on the PSN recently, and I've got it downloaded, but it's in my backlog, so I haven't actually loaded it up yet. But it's I'm gonna get there.
I love it. It's a resource management game, which is my jam. I really like sort of games with very little stress in them, where you're just sort of doing a bunch of little tasks. But this one has a really fun sort of like horror cult skin on it. So you're like an adorable little anthropomorphic lamb, but you're starting a cult to worship an ancient unnamed god, and you create doctrines in your cult, and those doctrines include things like cannibalism. You can just like create a doctrine where like actually everybody really loves eating the meat of people who you've slaughtered. So it's like fun and cute, and also like really spooky season appropriate.
Yes. Oh my god, this sounds right up my alley. I finally am being a big brave boy, and I'm playing the Silent Hill 2 remake. That was my
too scary.
Oh boy, I'm like 2 hours in, and I'm already like, what have I done? I don't, there are moments of self-loathing in my day, but like this feels like extra punishment, you know?
I really can't do actual horror. It's too scary for me. I like a monster movie quite a lot.
Yes.
Perhaps why I'm such a fan of Jurassic Park.
Big time.
So like I also really liked Nope, right? Jordan Peele's most recent movie, which is also a monster movie. I love the Alien franchise.
Yeah.
Like I'm down with monsters, but ghosts, zombies, human murderers, I'm too real life scared of all those things.
It's so interesting. I feel like I kind of land on the opposite side. If you brought up Alien, the Alien series. I mean, I understand. I know Alien and Aliens are perfect movies. I can totally recognize that. And at the same time, too, anything with slimy tentacles. And and actually, Alien has the 1-2 punch of my two least favorite things, which is slimy tentacles and mouth stuff. Anything that's like
it's really mouth centric.
It's so mouse centric, and it's just like, ooh, I've had enough of that, you know?
See, I'm fine with a monster that is gross. I can't deal with like human body horror. Like anything weird happening to the human body other than it just getting munched. Fine.
Sure.
I'm fine with a human getting munched. No worries about that. we're
Yeah,
made out of
yeah.
meat. This does not concern me. But like, if something weird starts happening, I'm like, no, thank you.
Yeah, stuff's come out of the wrong places.
No,
It's
keep
funny
it in the
actually.
right places.
um, Literally last week's episode, I did a bit of a roundup of my favorite horror of the year, and my
Mm-hmm.
number one favorite horror movie was The Substance, which is literally all stuff coming out of the wrong places. Everybody, and
Yeah.
I found it. I mean, I think it's incredible, but it also was a difficult watch.
I'm sure it's like a brilliant commentary on
Yeah,
something, but no
yeah.
thanks.
Right? That's literally, it did feel like, as I was watching, I was like, I do get, I like, I feel like I got it in the first 5 minutes. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, this is what you're saying. Cool.
Yeah.
But I was still locked in, and I think part of it was like I was kind of challenging myself to watch it because body horror
Mm.
tends to be one of my no goes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like the I saw The Fly, like the David Cronenberg Fly, like way too young. I think I was like 6 or 7, and like that traumatized me for a decade.
Yeah,
And
can't.
so like just
Never will.
yeah, ugh, no,
Can't, won't, never will.
right? And I do find like like I don't trust people who really like body horror. Like there's something,
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
right? There's
People who
some
are
people
like
who are like the
big
thing.
fans of the Saw movies, I'm like,
Yes, exactly.
mm.
That is, to me, is the red flag. Like
Yeah,
it's or like people who
yeah.
like really like rewatching Requiem for a Dream. It's like, I'm like,
Like, what's
no,
wrong?
there's something.
Go, you need
Yeah,
therapy.
literally, right? Um, okay, so I'm loving the fact that we can just like spitball about all this, but I do want to circle us back to the book because I think this is really important, and I want everyone who hears this episode to go out and buy this. So we need to just like I think I first need to gush at you, and then
Oh,
we need
okay.
to just like unpack this. Okay.
I hope you mean it
Um.
metaphorically, because I'm grossed out by body horror.
Despite my autism, much of what I say is metaphorical.
Okay, all right.
um like I mentioned, like I literally just grabbed it without even cracking the cover. I just saw Jurassic Park, pop classics, I'm in.
Yep.
And then the position you take in the essays was just such a breath of fresh air, and just the disparate kind of angles that you take on the analysis of the text. It's one of my favorite examples of what the power of the essay form can do, which is
Mm.
to take something you're familiar with and then say, yeah, but what if we read it like this? What if we looked at it like this? um and I think where I want to start is kind of asking you about the sort of germination of the idea behind the your sort of, I guess you call it, the thesis of the
Yeah,
book.
yeah,
I read a little bit about, it started with a podcast episode, but I was
yeah.
wondering if you could kind of tell the backstory of how this book came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So it did indeed start with a podcast episode. I used to make a podcast called Secret Feminist Agenda, which was I ran for 4 seasons, I think. And what is a season? Hard to say. But
Literally.
after, yeah, nobody knows what that means.
No,
After the
no.
first season, it was an interview podcast, and the idea was that I was talking to feminists about the way that they enact their feminism in their day-to-day lives, because I really wanted to think through via conversation sort of feminism as a practice rather than just a set of theories.
Mhm.
And after the first season, I was like, I can't actually do an interview every week, because just the process of finding and booking a guest every week is like, it's too hard. You
Yep.
get
Oh yeah,
it.
you are literally vocalizing my inner monologue
Yeah,
from
yeah,
this year. I'm like, I
you
can't
get it.
do this. Yeah, yeah.
So
Yep.
then I was like, what if every second week is an episode with just me, where I don't have to
Mm.
book a guest? And so I started calling them minisodes. I thought that was a real word, but a lot of people encountered it and were like, what's that mean? I was like, a mini episode, obviously, a minisode. And in
Yes, come
those
on.
episodes,
Catch up.
I would just sort of like riff on some thing related to feminism that I had been thinking about that week. And so they were
Mm.
really different from episode to episode. Some of them were like responsive to something that was happening in the news. Some of them were just like, I read a book this week, like really just whatever I could come up with.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so one week I was like coming up with an episode idea, and I had just rewatched Jurassic Park for like, I don't know, the 100th time with a friend of mine who was seeing it for the first time. And I had talked her into watching it by being like, yeah, you
Oh.
got to see it. It's like one of the most important feminist films of our time. And she was like, sorry, isn't it about dinosaurs? And I was like, yeah, but all the dinosaurs are women and they only eat men. That's feminism. And she was like, okay.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
in this moment, just like as I gotta make another episode, I was like, oh, I'll tell people my theory about how Jurassic Park is a feminist classic. And it's one of those
Love it.
things that's like, I both meant it because it's
Yeah,
one of my favorite movies, and it was also a little silly and tongue in cheek, right? Because like
of
it's a
course.
Michael Crichton blockbuster movie, like it's not actually a feminist classic. Um,
Exactly.
so I made this episode just articulating my thesis, which is the dinosaurs have all been genetically engineered to be female because the scientists think that will make them more malleable and controllable, and the opposite is true. They break free, they devour those who would control them. And isn't that a beautiful feminist parable about becoming monstrous and resisting
Yes.
the engineers of your oppression? And so I made this little episode and I put it out there, and people were like, hey, I love this.
Yes.
Because so many people also love this movie, and
Mhm,
it's a new lens on a familiar thing that people love, which is like,
mhm.
kind of my jam. Like I made a podcast doing feminist critical readings of Harry Potter for several years with
Yeah,
with my
yeah.
longtime collaborator Marcel Cosman. Like, I like to take a thing that people know and be like, but what if a radical reading?
Mhm.
Um, but I had so much fun with people's response to this episode that I
Yeah,
was like, oh, it'd be really fun to do a pop classics of this. Like I knew right from the beginning it would be a pop classics. Like I
yeah.
knew the series. Um, Jen Suk Fung Lee, who is the editor of the series now, is a friend of mine. I'd read her Gentleman of the Shade, her My Own Private Idaho pop classic,
Yeah, yeah.
and loved it and was like, oh yeah, and so I finally, when I had enough time, I sent her in a little pitch that was kind of like, I'm pretty sure that I drafted the essay title names on Twitter, like as a thread. And again, it was kind of like, I'm serious, but also I'm kind of winking,
Yeah, big
right?
time. Yeah.
So it's, like life finds a way. Oh, Dr. Ian Malcolm and the complex post ecological, right? Like we're doing kind of a little bit of a winky thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I kept putting it out there and people kept being like, yes,
Mhm.
yes. And so finally I was like, cool, I guess I'm writing this book. And then when it
Mhm.
comes time to write a book, it stops being winky because you have to actually like articulate an argument. So,
Yes.
working with Jen really helped me sort of, the silliness is still there. She let it stay silly, but she also really helped me like take these ideas and work them through and figure out the stakes of them and make
Yes.
them cohere. So it's a stronger argument in book form than it was in podcast form, but
Sure.
that's the pleasure of editing.
But that's the thing that I think is one of the kind of magic tricks of the book is that it does rope you in initially with that like first kind of, you know, the first statement of the way you're framing the reading, and it is exactly as you described. There's so much, I was telling some people about it as I was starting to read it, and they all kind of laughed at it, and I,
Yeah.
I feel like that's sort of the purpose to draw you in, but then you start reinforcing it with so much like concrete and powerful research, and not only the the sources that you're quoting, but also the way you draw in your own personal stories, and the vulnerability behind that writing was just so powerful. And
Thank
by the
you.
time you're closing the book, you're like I felt my brain had been changed,
Yes.
and it
Yes.
and right, and it's like what's so you know what I had so much fun with it. What Wow, that's
Mhm.
a bad framing of the sentence, but you know what I'm driving at.
No.
The fun I had with
No, it was good.
the fun I had with the book was that exactly as you said, it starts you out in a familiar place, and then by the time you're done, you're way off in the deep end and you're somewhere completely unexpected,
Yeah.
and I find maybe I'm just the case study reader for a book like this, but that is exactly my jam,
You're my target audience for sure.
literally, right?
I mean, it's also, it's an approach that I have learned a little bit through podcasting,
Hmm.
right? Sort of start on familiar ground and then like slowly lead people to an idea, but it's also something that comes out of teaching,
Yeah.
Like I'm also a teacher, and so I'm used to this idea of like I'm going to start with something, you know, something you're
Hmm.
familiar with, and then I'm going to use that to be like, okay, but come with me. What if
Hmm.
what if actually we did destroy the patriarchy? Bear with me.
But your reader, or the student, is at that point like they've got their confidence built up, right? So they feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, absolutely, let's go.
Yeah.
It's right. um so a big kind of one of the driving thoughts behind this podcast is these questions of connection and these questions of community. And throughout the book, you're talking extensively about queer community, queer space, safety, and how chosen family is kind of forged
Mhm.
through life experiences. And one of the sort of like tentpole questions I always ask, I'm sort of flipping these around from the general order, but this is the one I find connects the most to the book, is this question of what community means. and
Mm.
and and your book taps into a variety of not only communities that exist, but also communities that could exist.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious, at that very baseline, using that word community, what does that word for you evoke? Like, what does community
Yeah.
mean for you?
Yeah, community is completely central to everything about my value system, the way I move through the
Hmm.
world, the way I understand the world. So I am I'm queer, I don't have any biological children, and I'm asexual. So a lot of the conventional forms of family that are sort of happen by default. Oh, and my mom's dead, and I'm like kind of have a complex relationship to the rest of my biological family. So, like we don't have any low-hanging fruit here in terms of having family, having built-in
Yeah.
automatic community. Um, and so for a long time now, I've had to push myself to be more deliberate about the ways that I make community for myself, and the way that I seek out community that receives me in the way that I need to be received,
Hmm.
which is to say, seeking out community who understand friendship to be a pivotal relationship in their lives, who are not going to think of our friendship as secondary to, say, a romantic relationship, right?
Hmm.
That's like
Hmm.
really, really important to me to know that, like, because my friends are the primary relationships in my life, I need to also be the primary relationship, like part of the primary relationships in my friends' lives. Like, I
Yeah.
actually don't want to be anybody's most important person. That's too much pressure. Um,
100%. Yes.
what I'm really interested in is like building resilient networked communities
Hmm.
where many of us are caring for one another, where I have my set of skills and capacities that I bring into my community, the things that I'm really good at, the resources that I have that maybe other people don't have. But then other people are bringing in their own resources and capacities. And we can take turns sort of tapping in and tapping out when people
Mhm.
do or do not have the energy to deal with a particular crisis. I've got more like financial resources than a lot of my friends because I'm a tenured professor at a university, and a
Sure.
lot of my friends are artists. And
Yeah.
so like they don't have I own property, I have a pension. So like we have conversations about, how can we make a retirement plan where my
Yeah.
resources can be expanded to care more widely for people, but I also part of the intensity of my job is that like I have less time. So like in a
Yes.
crisis situation, a friend is sick, and it's like, there's another friend who has the capacity and the emotional literacy and the experience to be like working with her to help her prepare for her surgery. And then she can communicate to the rest of us, here are some resources that this friend needs. And I can be like, cool, like I don't have a ton of time to
Mm-hmm.
offer, but like you said that like she needs some more sheet sets because she's going to be recovering in bed. I can buy some
Yep.
sheet sets.
Yep.
Like I can absolutely, I'm so good at research. I'm going to find such good sheet sets. I'm going to buy
Fuck
them. I'm going
yeah.
to bring them to her. I'm going to do a thing. So like
Oh, my
this
heart.
sense, right? That like we can care for each other better when we understand it as a collective responsibility and when we
Mm-hmm.
celebrate the different strengths that we all bring into what we do. And those
Yes.
those small acts of collectivity, of problem solving, even of just like trying to get like a bunch of neurospicy people together to like plan a party, like all of these things are in some ways like practice for the bigger harder stuff that's coming. Like we
Mm-hmm.
talk, I'm really interested in like mutual aid and community care, and the idea that
Yep.
like we actually very clearly cannot trust our systems, our governments, those in power to take care of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're building up the skills to take care of each other. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, some of those skills, some like queer preppers are really interested in like learning to farm, learning to hunt, learning to preserve. And these are really, really valuable skills.
Yep.
And community care is also a really valuable skill. And
Yes.
practicing that in the micro in terms of how we treat one another and how we respond to each other, it lets us create these like robust community networks so that when we need
Mm.
them, we can activate them.
It's oh my god, you're saying so many things that are spiderwebbing my brain, and I just want to just sit and listen to you talk. But one thing that came up for me is this idea of modeling, right?
Mm,
So I actually see several therapists. I
brag.
have a I know that's my community care is I just take care of the community
The
of voices,
community that's
but
hanging out up here.
literally. One of them, I'm in a dialectical behavior therapy group,
Mhm.
therapy group, and one of the sort of tenets of that is to practice the skills you will need in a
Mm,
space where you're safe to practice,
yes.
because the more you get used to it in a safe space,
Yeah.
the easier it'll be to tap into it in a more escalated space.
Yeah.
um and I'm really curious about, I want to keep building on this thought, because the idea of modeling, but also the idea of fostering these communities is something that
Hmm.
I'm really um trying to participate within. And I do find myself hitting a lot of roadblocks because of, as you say, the sort of inherent, very blatant limitations of the capitalist system.
Yep.
Everybody is shorter on capacity, is shorter on time, is shorter on, you know, uh, it feels like so many of us, we want to participate in this, but we're just too burned out by
Yep.
surviving.
Yep.
Um, and 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 I'm curious about what types of steps you could maybe recommend, or maybe some steps that you've taken within your community, um, that listeners or myself could sort of try to
Yeah.
practice to foster these types of communities.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many, right? Because there's
Mm,
never going to be one right way to make
of
community,
course,
because community is like the particular
nebulous.
encounter of a particular group of people.
Yeah.
Um One of them for me is being willing to experiment with different forms of gathering. Um, to say like, okay, let's try out like a standing Zoom happy hour. Let's try out once a week we watch the same thing at the same time and text each other. Let's try out
Mm,
a once a month D&D game. Let's try out, right? So figuring out, you know, what fits, being
yeah.
willing to try them out, being willing to experiment, and to say when it's not working for you too, right? To be like, oh,
Yeah.
actually at the end of a work day, being on Zoom's the last thing I want to do. I don't want to do this. Can we try a phone call while we go for a
Yeah.
walk? Can we try something else? And also, the being willing to spend a little bit of time navigating those tricky conversations with people.
Mhm.
One thing that I'm sort of working through with a number of my dear friends right now is our relationship to flexibility versus predictability around making
Mm.
sure we see each other. So,
Mhm.
like, I have a really sort of scheduled job at this phase in my life. Like, that's not always been the case. I was in school for a very long time. My schedule used to be incredibly flexible. But at this
Yeah.
point, like, I am booked. I am just
Mhm.
booked 9 to 5, like 3 months out. It's silly.
Mm.
And so, what I want is to like get time with you on my calendar.
Yeah.
And I have friends who have young kids. When you have young kids, you often can't make those kinds of
Yep.
commitments. I have friends who are chronically ill or disabled who are like, cool, I have no way of knowing if in 2 months on a Tuesday I'm going to be able to do that thing. And I
Yep.
have friends who, like, the very process of making those kinds of schedules is like deeply stressful to them. And
Mhm.
so I'll reach out and be like, "Hey, can we get something on the books for January?" And they're like, "No, please." And so figuring that out, right? Like, both
Yeah.
hearing from them what they need, articulating what I need, and then getting a little creative in terms of like the approaches that we take.
Yeah.
So like we're experimenting right now with like, what if we've got like a standing thing in the calendar, but you can always not show up? Like,
Mhm.
does that
Mhm.
work? And then, like, part of my responsibility around that is going to be like not getting my feelings hurt if like some days people can't show up. And,
Yep.
and that goes in hand with one of the other major pieces for me, which is really working to let go of notions of scarcity around friendship.
Mm.
So this
Mhm.
idea, I remember I've learned a lot about friendship from my dear friend Zena Sharman, who I name check because she is a writer who also writes in really, really beautiful ways about queer community.
Mm.
And um, I remember sort of early on when we were first becoming closer friends and we were trying to find a time that we could get together for dinner. And it was very like, okay, here's one Wednesday when we're both actually free. And she was like, I don't want to have something every night that week.
Mhm.
I don't want to completely schedule myself. And I was like, yeah, you're right. That sounds really stressful. And she
Yep.
was like, we don't have to think of our friendship from a perspective of scarcity. We don't have to
Yeah.
assume that because we can't see each other soon, that means we don't love each other or we won't
Yep.
see each other again or we can't text or we can't. And so just being like, if I am busy and this person is busy and I can't see them for a while, I don't
It's
have
not a
to
rejection.
yeah, I don't have to
Yeah.
interpret that as a failure,
Yeah.
as a like we're doing our friendship wrong or we're not really friends. Um and really shifting to that like I'm just going to believe that we love and care for each other and
Mhm.
that we're going to find ways to connect. Um
Mm.
really sort of helps lean into the sort of long-term sustainability of these relationships, I
Mm.
find.
And wow, I just
I think a
every time.
lot about friendship. Can you tell?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate this so much. Like I'm just like, I'm finding myself just flabbergasted by just like the fact that you're speaking off the cuff, but it's so impactful and it's so deep and it's like you're just voicing so many of the things that I think, and it's just so nice to hear it like outside of my brain. Um, One thing I think often about is for me with those kinds of like the desire for that like personal live connection and that feeling that you only get in person.
Yeah.
And I say it to myself and I hear so many guests on the show say it and I hear just friends in general say it, where it's like it doesn't feel the same when you get a text or when you get a meme or
Mhm.
and something I've been really practicing a lot recently has been to just mindfully shift that in my brain and
Mhm.
let myself feel good about a meme in a way that I would feel good if we went and got coffee,
Yeah.
because it does play in exactly what you're talking about the idea of, I'm somebody I'm like you. I like to schedule, and I like to be like, in 2 weeks I'll see it. I'm not quite as far ahead as January, but like I'm like a 2-3 week outer.
Yeah.
Because I do like to I like to know what's coming up. I like to plan, and I
Yeah.
like to be ready. And at the same time too, I am also at the other side. I am somebody who's like, oh, 3 week ago James's capacity was much higher than today James's capacity.
That
So like
that
I'll
bitch had all kinds of crazy ideas.
Right, exactly. What was he thinking? Right?
I
Like,
don't
girl.
know.
But so I will, I'll often communicate like this is super flexible on my side.
Mhm.
But it is it's that what you just what you're talking about like not letting yourself be hurt by that, and it's
Mm,
hard to, right? It's a
it's hard.
difficult thing to not to feel like you're failing the connection by not seeing them in person,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it yeah, it's just such a nice reminder to be like I don't like that whole kind of stoic thing of like you choose how you feel, but I do think it's like I think we choose how we react to things,
Yeah.
it to a certain degree, right?
There's this absolutely incredible series that I loved so much that I watched it twice. It
Mhm.
is a sort of black comedy murder mystery series called Deadlock,
Oh, okay.
LOCH. It's set in Tasmania, and it is about a small town that's formerly a mill town that is gentrifying primarily via a bunch of lesbians moving there. You know this phenomenon where a bunch of lesbians decide they're all going to move to a small town and then they start like a weird arts festival.
The funny thing
So
is, I know a bunch of those in
yeah, yeah,
small
yeah, for
town
sure.
BC. So yes.
For sure, like Nelson, BC, for example. Yeah, yeah, you get it. So it's one of those towns. It's based on a
Yep.
real town in Tasmania where this is
Okay.
happening, where a real festival takes place. Um, and so one of said lesbians is a police officer in this town,
Mm.
and kind of like dirtbag men start showing up dead, and it
Mm.
becomes this really interesting story about gender and class and violence. That is also like a really funny sort of scathing cultural commentary. And she's
Mm.
got this incredible partner who is like she's trying to like she's really stoic and she's trying to solve a mystery, and then her partner is always wanting to like really process feelings together. And there's this moment, and it's that sort of thing where it's like we're we're teasing her, but the things that she's saying are also very true, but like it's pretty funny.
Yep. Yep.
And there's a scene where like she's talking about how she's really struggling with the fact that like her partner has a like like another detective that she's working with who is a woman, and she's been feeling jealousy about that, and she's like, but my feelings are my own and it is my responsibility to parent them.
Yep.
And it's so funny because it's definitely like a laugh line, and also I have used it so much to be like,
Because it's spot on.
it's spot on. It's like, it's not, the feelings are not bad, the feelings are
Hmm.
not wrong, but they
Hmm.
are your feelings, and it is
Hmm.
ultimately your responsibility to parent them. And
Hmm.
sometimes the parenting of those feelings will include expressing them to people you love,
Hmm.
but that does not mean that they are those people's responsibility. They're
Bingo.
your feelings to parent.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
thanks, Deadlock. I really appreciate this important lesson.
I mean, it's a beautiful encapsulation of
Yeah.
like something that I have been less effective at in the past. That's one of my new favorite therapy words, is not saying
Hmm.
it's a good or bad, it's effective or ineffective. That's
Yeah,
something I
yeah,
learned
yeah.
from DBT.
It's something that you are in the process of learning.
Bingo, bingo.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I've been getting much more effective with it recently, but yeah, it is that feeling of and I think that's been one of the funny questions that I navigate with some of my connections, is this idea of like w- what part to share,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
so many of my friends will share kind of everything, and I'll look back and I'll be like, ooh, I don't know if that was actually the right call, because now
Yeah.
everybody feels a little weird,
Yep.
and I don't want to make them feel unsafe for
Yeah.
sharing, but it's, and I've been that person too, where I've just been like, hi, nice to meet you, let me tell you about why I hate my
Yeah.
mother,
Time
like,
time to trauma dump. You know what I really believe in that is a thing that
exactly.
people make fun of a lot is asking for people's consent before you like do a big emotional conversation.
Yes.
Like I remember there being this like moment on Twitter where somebody like offered a script for people to use to basically say like I do not have the capacity to provide you with the emotional labor that you are requesting of me right now. And like Twitter
Yep.
went hard on this
Of
person.
course. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, but actually isn't that great? Like, isn't it
Yeah.
really great? But again, it's like part of what is required to be able to do that in the first place is to know that like we are held by networks. There's
Hmm.
this beautiful book called Undrowned. One sec, I'm gonna check the author's name because I can't remember it, but it's so good. Alexis Pauline Gumbs. Undrowned: Black Feminist Lessons from Marine Mammals.
I
Um,
think I have it.
I
I
it's
actually
part
think I
of
have it on one of my shelves.
it's so good. It's part of Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergent Strategies series.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's a beautiful series of essays about sort of what we can learn from different marine mammals. And
Mm.
one of them, she's writing about networks of care and this idea that like whales moving in pods can take turns sleeping because the other ones like take responsibility, like this sort of idea that
Hmm.
like you can tap in and out, that you move in collective so that people can rest at different moments. um
Yes.
and I feel that way about emotional capacity, that
Yeah.
like I don't want to be anybody's only source for emotional support because
Yeah.
that means that I can never tap out, and sometimes I really do need to tap out.
Oh yeah.
And so
Big time.
I can tap out
Yeah.
if I know that there are other people in your life who are also caring for you.
Yeah.
Like that's that makes us all healthier and happier and makes our relationships more robust.
There's a concept I got introduced to last year. So I just hit a 1 year sober a couple weeks ago, and I didn't go
Congratulations.
through. Thank you very much. I didn't go through like the traditional like AA program at all, but I
Mhm.
did speak to some people who went through it, and they gave me this. My favorite kind of piece was, they said, get yourself a 6 pack. And what that is get 6 people into your life who can
Mm,
support you, so that, exactly as you described, you're not putting all of it on one person. Instead, you're able to spread the load. And so,
yeah.
and in turn, you get to be part of their 6 pack,
Yeah.
leave it to a bunch of alcoholics to come up with funny
Yeah,
uses of,
absolutely.
right, but it's been one of my favorite kind of practices to sort of spread it out, because I found that it not only, you know strengthens the connections of the people I need, but it also gives me more capacity to share that when they need something, because
Mhm.
it's not. I find when you're over dumping on one person, they then in turn try to compensate by dumping back on you, right? And you're
Yep.
like, no, I'm already tapped. I like,
I got nothing for you, bud. All I am is a
literally.
spout.
Yeah, and it's, and that links too with this idea that I just recently got introduced to in one of my one of my other therapy sessions, is this idea that repair is a one-way street. When you have a rupture in a connection, you don't get to repair both hurts at once. You repair
Mm-mm.
one first, and you focus on one person, and then once that's fixed, then you flip. And
Mhm.
sometimes that isn't done in one session, sometimes that's over time, right?
Yeah.
And I think that bleeds into this idea of support, which is that it's like, it isn't a mutual thing, it is a one-way street,
Mhm.
and that's not a bad thing, right? That's just how these things work, right?
I bubbled with two friends during lockdown, because they're a couple. I live alone, and in BC, small households were allowed to bubble together.
Yep.
Um so, the three of us were like a bubble for like a year and a half. And so it's been a lot of time together, really at our collective nadirs. And we developed at this time this shorthand for the idea of like getting to be the one who is receiving versus being the one who is taking care.
Mm-hmm.
And it's whether you get to be baby or daddy. So like, and there's like different things different people are daddies around, right? So
Yep.
like this person's dinner daddy, like I'm car daddy, like, but sometimes it's just like I just need to be allowed to be baby tonight.
Yeah.
And that's
Yep.
like I will not be asked to do any logistical work. I will not be asked to
Mhm.
demonstrate any emotional maturity. I can
Yep.
just be a nasty screaming little gremlin. and
Yes.
and if you're tired of me, you can leave the room, frankly.
Oh, I
But like you get
I've
consent
heard.
for it first.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like we buy
Yeah.
into it together. Like it's okay, I can be baby. Great.
That's my favorite usage of those terms out of any version I've heard in recent years. In the little handout I sent, it said if you want to bring a couple questions. I was wondering if you
Yeah.
wanted to flip the mic. Do you have anything that you wanted to kind of ask
Oh my
about or
god, yeah, I
chat
do,
about
and it's
or
it's a
prompt?
hypothetical. It's a
Fuck
hypothetical,
yeah.
but I've been thinking about it because right now I'm from Ottawa originally, and
Mm-hmm.
right now a very dear friend of mine is in Ottawa for the Writers Festival,
Mm,
and she has been like visiting some of my old haunts.
right.
And so my question is, um, if you could bring an adult friend to a childhood favorite place, what would it be?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. So I grew up in Calgary, and I don't know if I would really want to take anyone back there these days in any capacity. You
But you
know?
could take them to what's that great museum that has all of the little, like the town, like the little
Well,
town in
there's
it?
Heritage Park.
No,
Is that
not
what you mean?
Heritage Park. The museum that's got like a little, like, you c- you know, like little dioramas, and it's like, oh,
Isn't
I'm in
that
a little
Miniature World in
shop.
Victoria?
No,
Am I?
not that bigger than that, life
It's
size.
bigger than that. Oh my god. The Glenbow? I'm trying to think of the
Glenbow.
different. It was
It's
it the
the
Glenbow? Okay.
Glenbow. Thank
Okay.
you.
You know what? Actually,
Like,
Hannah.
no, smaller than Heritage Park, bigger than Miniature Village, right in the middle.
You actually just spiked my brain, and I just realized that actually is where I would take people, because as a kid, my two favorite places to go was the Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller, because
Mm.
as a child obsessed with Jurassic Park.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Go to the dinosaur museum and just be blown away by that, or it was to go to the Glenbow Museum. And I remember that I think they still have it, this massive, massive Buddha statue. Actually, no, it's not Buddha. I think it's Shiva. It's this
Mhm.
huge, like, towering statue. And it used to scare the living shit out of me. But I also loved it. I just thought
Yeah.
it was like fun spooky, you know?
Yeah.
Because like her face was like really like, and she had these heads in her hands, and she was just so fucking cool,
Yeah.
and at least where it was when I was a kid, it would be like you would come up the stairs and you'd come around the corner and she'd be right in the door frame of that main kind of exhibit, and so I was always
Mhm.
like excited to turn around. So I think if I was going to take somebody, it would be there, and
Yeah.
I would hope that she's still there, but I don't
Yeah.
know. um,
Find out together.
but
I mean, Royal
right,
Tyrrell is also
exactly.
a great answer. Like,
Oh
if you have a friend who
God.
hasn't been, being like,
Mm.
come with me to where the dinosaurs are from. Like, just
Yes.
bringing somebody to the Badlands for the first time would be fun enough, but,
Yes.
like, really, that's a good museum. I love that your
Oh
answer was
God.
also museum, because my friend went to the Ottawa Museum of Nature
Oh
today, and
yeah.
that's, in the book, I talk about that as being the site of my first encounter with dinosaurs, and
Yeah.
so she brought a copy of my book to the dinosaur exhibit in the museum and like took a picture of the book in the exhibit and sent it to
Oh, my
me.
heart.
Like she took my book on a little
Oh.
field trip back to where she's from.
That is a good friend. Oh
I
my
know,
god.
right? Ugh, what a dream. Dina
It's
Del Bucchia, poet. Check out her work.
yes, I'm gonna need to hot link to all these people in the show notes for this. And I also just like love it. Like, please keep name dropping because anytime I can find out about other artists,
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, no, museums in general, but the Tyrrell was just like I had family who lived in Drumheller, like just outside of Drumheller in this place
Mhm.
called East Cooley, which is just like a ghost town. It was a coal mining town. But we would go out there all the time and yeah, it just, yeah, and you talk about the impact of this sort of museum culture and the sort of the colonialism behind that and I have a very conflicted personal experience both with museums and with zoos
Mm.
because growing up my grandma was a docent at the Calgary Zoo for like 40 years. She volunteered there
Whoa.
and like I knew personally like Tom Baines, who was like the founder of the Calgary Zoo, there it was such a magic and actually it has a great dinosaur park too. It is an amazing dinosaur park.
Zoos
um
shouldn't have dinosaurs.
I know. It
That's
was so strange.
confusing.
I know. It was such a strange, like, it was in the corner of the zoo. It was just like, and also, by the way, dinosaurs, but it was like, it was such a magic place for me growing up. And then now, with what I know now about the culture of museums, the culture of zoos,
Yeah.
there's such a conflict in me for like, how do I reconcile that
Yeah.
beautiful impact and like what inspired me to love animals and love dinosaurs and was such a precious time with my grandmother and
Yeah.
then also being like, but it's also horseshit and all those fucking polar bears
Yeah.
shouldn't be here and penguins shouldn't be in North America and all that,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I mean, hot take, you don't reconcile it. You just let
yeah,
you just live in the messy complexity of it. And
I
like
guess that's
you
it.
like you can look back and say like, wow, this thing really mattered to me. Like going to the zoo was really, really pivotal to me. And also like I understand why zoos are bad. And
Yeah.
also, like I know more about museums than zoos.
Hmm.
I have been to a very small number of zoos in my life, and they mostly really bummed me out.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember
yeah, you're not
visiting the
really missing much.
yeah, I remember visiting the Edinburgh Zoo, um, and there was a polar bear. This would have been in like 2006. They had a
Mm,
polar bear there, and that polar bear was like so yellow and sad looking,
yeah.
and I just was like, "Get in my suitcase. I'll bring you to freedom."
Literally, it's like
Um,
I feel like half the animals are depressed and the other animals are just hiding it better,
yeah,
like, and they're all
but
jerking
like
off because they've nothing else to do. Like, it's
right?
just
I
like,
do go to the Vancouver Aquarium and I enjoy the
yeah,
Vancouver Aquarium. And I am
yeah.
glad the Vancouver Aquarium no longer has dolphins or orcas because
I
it
couldn't
used
believe they
to,
had them. I couldn't believe that.
right? But like these fields are like anything else, fields that are developing, shifting, that
Hmm.
contain a lot of internal complexity that like
Hmm.
we look at them from the outside and it can be tempting to just say that they're one thing, right? Like museums
Yeah,
are just colonial institutions. And
yeah,
it's like, well, as long as there have been museums, there have been people working at museums who have wanted to imagine them as something else.
yes.
And right now, museums are transforming. The world of curation is transforming. The
Hmm.
conversations about um like appropriate repatriation of stolen cultural artifacts is like
Yeah,
happening. Um and that doesn't mean it's happened or that these
yeah,
problems are fixed, but like there is complexity um and movement within these fields that
hmm.
also means that we don't have to have just like a single static relationship with them and be like zoos evil, people who
Good,
like
bad,
zoos
yeah,
evil. Like it's
yes.
just not a useful way to see the world. um
Well, just black and
Fun
white
though.
thinking in general. Yeah, well, that's just it. Like
Fun and
black.
easy.
That's just it, right? It's like black and white thinking in any capacity on any
Yeah.
subject is way more fun because it's way easier to just
Oh my
literally
god,
be
so
like
easy.
all villain, all hero, whatever,
Ugh,
everything
so
is
morally
just a
simplistic.
right, exactly. It's just like, yeah, the world is a Marvel movie and we can just punch our problems, like and it's just like it's obviously much easier
Yeah.
to do, but like then you actually get into the real world and you're like, "Oh yeah, right. My
Yeah.
problems aren't Doctor Doom."
And
you
this
know?
is my issue with Jurassic World versus Jurassic Park, because Jurassic Park does not have a real villain and is all about ethical complexity and nuance.
Yes.
And Jurassic World is about them having genetically engineered an evil dinosaur who has to be murdered by Chris Pratt.
Yep. Yes.
It's just
Okay,
like, what if Jurassic Park but a Marvel movie? And it's
like
like, no, the good thing about this is when there's nuance. You can't make an
literally.
evil dinosaur.
Because even
And they're
like
like, watch me.
but like so you started to tap into this at the end of the book, and I was really excited
I know
because
there was
I
so much
wanted
more,
to.
and then my editor was like, "This isn't a book about Jurassic World," and I was like, fine."
Yes. And I understood why you cut yourself off, but you started dipping your toes into exactly what I had been feeling about it, which was this like it was like watching someone wear a Jurassic Park suit, but like like
But badly.
it was like yeah, right? It was like the Buffalo Bill scene and Silence of the Lambs, but like
Like, oh,
but right,
mhm.
but now suddenly I'm imagining that, but a velociraptor tuck it anyway. But
Just
I
tucking itself inside of a
yeah,
human skin.
right,
Well, that's fun to
exactly.
think about because in those scenes, that scene in the kitchen where you like really see the velociraptors moving
Yes.
around, that's people inside velociraptor suits.
Yeah.
So like it's really fun to then
Oh,
picture those velociraptors inside
reverse
people's
it.
suits.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or just like
Oh
back
my
and forth.
god.
It's just like a Matryoshka doll. It's just like per person,
Yes.
velociraptor.
And
Just
it just and then suddenly they're cake and it just doesn't
yeah.
make any sense and but
A turducken of humans and dinosaurs. I don't know. I don't know what's happening.
I love this. But it is the Jurassic World is where we were at, I think. And
Hmm.
it was like what's so fascinating on a like adult reading of Jurassic Park is that like even the quote unquote evil characters, even like the lawyer or something like
Yeah.
that, like he's not an evil dude. He's just kind of a
No.
shithead,
Yeah.
like, but he's just a bureaucrat. He's just like, ugh, yeah, we want to make
Yeah.
profits, but like, I also have to pee, like he just,
A hundred
like
percent.
he's just a dude. He's not like, Mwahaha, twirling his mustache.
Yeah.
Whereas then you get to the like, the Jurassic World movies, and you literally have like, not only do you have, the iterations of like the Vincent D'Onofrio cackling villain, but you also
Yeah.
have what you described, like the engineered evil dinosaur who like literally at one point becomes Jason Voorhees and starts stalking the evil clone girl or whatever she is, like
Yep.
it's
Yeah, the
nonsense.
fact that the second the second movie, the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, becomes like a horror movie where
Yeah,
like the dinosaur is like stalking a kid through a house and it's like I don't know. But like
what are we
I
doing
guess
here?
I guess I mean that is part of what I love about the velociraptors is like
Yeah.
I did we did a watch along of Jurassic Park just last weekend. Um and it was very satisfying to have people in this for Patreon supporters for my podcast Material Girls. Um and it was very fun to have people who like haven't read the book yet
Mm-hmm.
saying things that I'm like, that's in the book. That's in the book.
Mm-hmm.
That's also in the book. And at one point, somebody was like the velociraptors were stalking the children. And somebody was like, they ate a cow yesterday and two men earlier today. Why are they still hungry? They should be asleep. And I was like, correct. Hunger
Right?
absolutely does not. But like, that's, the terror of them is their endless hunger.
Yeah. Oh, whoa. I hadn't even really I've never thought about that direction of like the metabolism of a velociraptor and like, but like you talk about, they have 65 million years of hunger to catch up on, they got
Yeah,
some eating to do.
100%. 100%. It's like they are hungry on behalf of the entire earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
they are going
one
to
little
exclusively eat those who try to like harness and control the power they represent.
Yeah. Well, and one little measly lawyer is not going to cut it.
Yeah,
Like
that scrawny
he was all
lawyer.
skin and bones, right?
Yeah.
We've kind of touched on it a bit already in the community discussion, but the real the whole crux of this show has been asking. Really, it started as being like, have I been a good friend or not? And then I got diagnosed with multiple, with different cluster B disorders and all kinds of fun things. So it was like I probably haven't been, but but it was really this question of what is being a friend, what is
Mm,
being, and it obviously started out with the question of good or bad, and then it's since evolved into a less loaded judgment on that term. But I am really curious about people's personal interpretations of friendship, and what does it mean to you to be a friend?
mm, yeah. There's uh so one of my favorite theorists, critical theorists, is Lauren Berlant, who
Mm.
died a couple of years ago. Heartbreakingly, I mean, they were quite young still. Um, and God, I really wanted to meet them one day, but I did get to see them speak over Zoom during a sort of
Mm.
lockdown. They did an event, um, and they were talking about um, about community and about sort of building political solidarity. And they were talking about sort of the root of community being showing up,
Mhm.
and that for me, like that idea of like what we do is we show up for each other, for
Mhm.
me is the crux of it. And sometimes that is just literal, like I show up for you, like I go to your thing. You have a
Yeah.
thing, I go to it.
Yep.
I go, you
Yep.
got a book launch, I'm coming to your book launch.
Yep.
You got a choir concert, I'm coming to your choir concert. Like I'm gonna show up as much as I can. Um Part of it is like showing up for you in the shape that your life takes.
Mm.
So, um, it's really important to me that I show up for my friends who have kids, like in their capacity as parents, which means
Mhm.
also including their kids in my community and not being
Mhm.
like, oh, I only want to hang out with you when your kids aren't around. Like,
Yeah, kids are
get
cool. Yeah.
get rid of the kids and we can have like one-on-one time, which isn't to say that I
Yeah.
don't value one-on-one time with my
Of
friends who are
course.
parents. It's just like I'm showing up for
You
you.
don't
This
put
is
that
who you
pressure
are.
on them. Yeah.
This is what your life is.
Mhm.
um so that, like, for me, that's how I practice friendship, is by showing up for people, to the best of my capacity,
Mhm.
in the ways that they have communicated to me that it matters that I show up for them.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I don't, like, one of my favorite things for a friend to do for me is to communicate to me that something matters to them,
Mm.
because then I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, fuck yeah. Now I can show up."
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
tell me that this is important to you and I can be like, "Incredible. Thank
Mhm.
you." Like,
Mhm.
and sometimes that's physical presence and sometimes it's, receiving something in a particular way. I had a friend recently who shared something that she'd done, sort of an artistic project, um, on a group chat, sort of in the middle of the day while a lot of other conversations were happening, and it kind of got like just missed.
Mm.
Um, and she, it was hurtful for her. Like, it was a thing that she had worked on and was proud of,
Yeah.
and nobody responded to it. And so what she did is the next day she came back and she reshared it and she said, "Hey, I really don't think this was intentional, but nobody responded to this yesterday,
Yeah.
and it that hurt my feelings, and I would like for you to respond to it
Acknowledge
now."
me. Yeah.
And everybody was like, "Yes, 100%." Like, the enthusiasm with which people were like, I all we want is to care for you in the way that you want to be cared for, and you
Yeah.
have given us such a gift by communicating a need and, like, asking for the way you want us to show up for you.
Yes.
And that's, the harder part for me, because I've often been a person who's very good at showing up. What I have been bad at is telling people how I need them to show up for me.
Bingo.
Um, because I have spent most of my life believing somewhere deep inside me that it's illegal for me to have needs.
Yes.
Everybody else, ooh, have all the needs you
Yeah.
want.
Can't
Oh, your
wait. Yeah.
vulnerability is a gift, but
Yes.
me,
Oh,
disgusting.
yeah.
A
Literally,
need?
literally
Absolutely
illegal.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like really, really like wrapping my head around that, like, hey, you know how much you love it when people you care about communicate a need to you? You know how that's like
Mm-hmm.
a gift, because then
Mm-hmm.
it like gives them a way to express their love and their care for you, and that's something that
Yes.
like you got to reciprocate that.
Yeah.
Like
Like
I
like
love
what
it
if
so much.
you
You tell me you want something and I get to
Yes.
give it to you. I fucking love that. And
Yeah.
so maybe I should also do that for you.
That's just it. It's like what if you gave someone the gift of your needs? You
Yeah.
know, like what if you
What
what
if
if you
they were
let
a gift
them
and not a
feel
burden? What if you believed
exactly.
What if you
Yes.
believed that your needs were a gift and not a burden?
Yes, right?
Oh.
And but I mean dare to dream, we'll get there someday, right?
Listen, we're all still working on it.
Yeah.
This is a moment when I can like hear another friend's voice in my head going, sounds fake.
Right. I mean, I'm always laughing about this in therapy sessions where I'm always like, we'll be talking and I'll be agreeing, and then I'll be like, yeah, but, like, because there's always that little voice in the back of my head that's like, but what if
I
he's lying to
I
you, right?
uh a friend once, like we were, we were on a long walk, having a deep conversation, and she at one point sort of like made me turn to face her and look her in the eye and said, I really want you to hear this. You would still be valuable if you weren't doing anything for anybody else.
Mhm.
And I was like, I don't believe you.
Yeah, how dare you? Yeah. And I
And
never
she was
spoke
like,
to her again.
yeah, I know you don't, and I want you to
Yeah.
hear it. Like,
Yeah.
and you don't, it's okay. And
Mhm.
it's been, years of work from
Mhm.
that. And like
Mhm.
my favorite, I think this, because I am a real intellectualizer of
Yeah.
things. Um I have found ways to like use that to help myself with things that I find emotionally difficult,
Mhm.
which is just to like think myself into the logical conclusions of emotional realities,
Yeah.
right? So like I'll be in one of those spirals where I'm like, actually everybody in my life secretly hates me
Of
because I'm a
course.
terrible person. You know that
Yeah.
one.
Of course,
Um
yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I'll be like,
The
well,
the
let's
"Are you
pause.
mad at me?" group text to my whole
Y-
life?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. To everybody I've ever known.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but like I actually won't send that because
No, of
I
course
already
not.
know, and
Yeah,
actually
exactly.
and I don't need that. But like I can pause and be like, consider, if you will, the evidence.
Mhm.
And let's just sort of, apply a Occam's razor approach to
Mhm.
this and be like, no, is everybody in your life creating an elaborate sort of Truman Show conspiracy where they pretend to love you? Or maybe is it
Do they
maybe
just love you?
the more obvious, maybe it's the more obvious one.
Yeah.
So for me, this sense of like, I only have value if I'm being productive, I only have value if I'm doing things for other people.
Mhm.
Um, it's engaging with the work of disability justice writers and
Yes.
thinkers that has like shifted my beliefs around that, because
Mhm.
I'm like, do I think that other people's value has to do with the amount that they achieve? No,
Mhm.
I profoundly don't.
Mhm.
Ergo, it can't be true only of me.
Yes.
There's
Well,
just not, there's no possible way that it's across the board incorrect for everybody else, but applies exclusively to me. That doesn't make any
exactly.
sense.
And to the point where, like, when I think about it, I start to realize that, like, the people who, quote unquote, produce the most, or which then supposedly leads to the most success,
Hmm.
are often the people that I trust the least. Like I trust highly productive, highly successful people very little. I like people who just like kind of they
God,
get done what they
James,
like
I'm
doing.
sorry. Okay, I can't help it.
But it's I realize that could be taken as a subtweet, couldn't it? Because but
Outrageous.
but it's like, but so the way it's framing in my brain is like, people who follow an impulse and create something and put that out, and whether it succeeds or not, it's like they just and I use your book as an example. You had this impulse that came to you and you followed it through, right? And that to me is the mark of authentic success over like, and I'm not even trying to disparage an artist like this, but like I'm thinking of like, Olivia Rodrigo, or like, the these pop icons who are selling out stadiums, and it's like I don't trust Taylor Swift,
Oh, we shouldn't trust Taylor Swift. No, that would be
exactly,
terrible. But it's not.
right.
It's because you shouldn't trust billionaires.
Well, I mean, I guess she's in
Yeah,
a different category altogether, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah. Never
the
trust a
idea
billionaire.
of like, but the idea of like productivity is the thing that leads you to success, which is the thing that leads you to validity in your life,
Yeah.
um, I'm
Usually
far
a sign
more
of somebody
interested in
who's like hasn't, done some work on themselves.
that's just it, right? That's exactly right, and I'm far more interested in just authentic existence, and I think sometimes the conversation gets kind of like muddy with this idea of like there's a bit of a fantasy of like the utopian world means there's never any work, and it's like no, like there would still
Oh
be
my God,
a
there's so
lot
much
of work
work.
to do.
There's so much work to be done.
Exactly, right?
It's just,
But you would enjoy it because you'd want to, like,
yeah, I mean, not always. Like, there's work
or
that needs
that,
to be
yeah,
done that isn't fun. Sometimes we do
yeah,
things that aren't fun, but we do things that aren't fun for those we care about all the time. Like,
bingo,
we do,
yeah.
like, that's, we lovingly engage in acts of manual labor and care
Mhm,
frequently. Um,
mhm.
it's the it's the sort of crushing requirement that we do them in order to survive,
Yeah.
when it's not actually necessary.
Well, I
But
think that spikes in my brain. Seeing I think it was probably a TikTok or something like that. It was somebody saying the very bare minimum you can do is go to somebody's birthday. If they invite you, go to their birthday. You don't
mm,
have to stay. You don't have to be there long, but make an appearance. And it's like that's like for some, myself very much included. That's like emotional labor. To be like, I'm
yeah,
sorry, what? I have to go outside?
I
How
have to
dare you?
leave the house.
Right?
I when I first moved to Vancouver, so I've been here for like 8.5 years now.
Mm,
And so, I moved here in my early 30s. I didn't know anybody in the city. I was building community from scratch because I'd gotten a job at a university here.
mhm,
And though that first year of like really working to deliberately build community and make friends was really hard. Like I cried a
mhm.
lot. Um
Yeah.
and I had a lot of like panic attacks and like social anxiety attacks where I would like
Yeah.
try to show up for a thing and then be like, nope, I have to leave and cry. Um
Well, and this
and
is this was in the era of the old birdhouse too, when it was extra scary.
it was so scary.
Oh
Um
man.
it was so hard. And I remember another friend being like, okay, I think I was talking about like a thing I'd been invited to, and I wanted to go because I'd been invited. And it's like, you're new in a city, you got invited to a thing, you got to go.
Mhm, mhm,
And it's like, it was like a big, like a backyard concert kind of situation. And I was like, I will know two people there, and
yeah.
there's going to be like 50 people there. And that
Terrifying.
absolutely terrifying. And so I was talking to a friend about like, what do I do? I really think I should go and I really don't want to.
Yeah.
And she was like, go and stay for 30 minutes. That's all you
Mm,
have to do is show up, stay for 30 minutes, and then leave. And if
mhm.
at the 30-minute mark you're enjoying yourself, you can stay longer. But you're not saying, I'm going to go to this event all night and I'm going to have a good time. Like, don't set those expectations that high.
Yeah,
You're going to
yeah.
show up and you're going to stay there for 30 minutes and then you're going to leave. And then, I went and I had a great time and I stayed way
Of
longer
course.
than 30 minutes. But
Yeah.
like, that like that's it. Set the expectation much lower so that
Yeah.
you can meet it with some success. Um
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, but also like that expectation, you know, I love when people show up to my birthday party
Yeah.
and friends who like can't make it to my birthday party, I'm not like, you must not love me.
Yeah. Big time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
Well, and isn't that the case?
life's fucking hard. You got shit going on.
Life happens, right? And isn't
Yeah,
that the case too? Like the difference in that internal monologue about yourself versus the internal monologue about others, where it's like, of course you can't show up, don't worry about it. Whereas it's like,
yeah,
if I don't, it's like, oh, I must be the biggest piece of shit in the city.
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Like history's greatest monster.
it's it's fucking nonsense.
No, but it's
um,
true about me. I am actually the worst person of all
well,
time.
I mean, I did. I think we're
You knew
in
you were gonna find them
competition here,
eventually.
right?
It's me.
This is I've been this has been a 7-year odyssey looking for you. um, Hannah, you are just an absolute delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna I think we'll just jump to I've just got one last kind of
Okay.
listener question that's really easy and fun. I always love to leave listeners on a bit of an actionable thing that they can try.
Mhm.
But before we get to that, I do want to just say, like, thank you so much. Like, thanks for coming on, for responding to my random Instagram message and just saying, "Fuck yeah, jumping in." I couldn't be more grateful for your time and for this book, which I am an immediate what a like a disciple of. I've been telling everyone about it for the last like
Thank
3 weeks
you.
since I bought it. So I I'm just I'm so I don't even know what the right word is. It's just I'm so impressed. I'm so inspired. I'm so just like there's a lot of emotions around you and around this book for me. So thank you very much for
Thank
all your
you.
work.
This
Yeah.
has been a delightful way to end my week
Good. I'm
and
really
slide
glad.
into my dirtbag weekend.
You know it. And we will get you there so soon. One last question. What is one thing listeners could try doing this week to be a more effective friend, either to themselves or to their community?
Oh man, I mean, there's so many there's so many good and serious things that I could say, but instead, here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say find out what your friend's favorite little treat is and like write it down. Like, in your notes app, make a list of like this is right, like this person really loves this thing. Like this friend of mine really enjoys a fancy marshmallow, like the
Yeah.
ones that are like square and artisanal and fresh, and just write them all down so that anytime you're like, I just want to express my love to this person, you can just be like, send them a fancy marshmallow.
Yeah. Oh, that's so magic, and it mashes so many different pieces of like remember it and then come back to it, and like you don't have to dump it. You don't have to do it 20 times this week. Just like even just
Yeah.
track it so that down the road you can do it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that one. Thank you so much. Fuck the listeners. I'm gonna do that. Right?
Do it. It's nice because then they're
Yeah.
so excited when you send them a little treat. We all just
Yes.
want a little treat.
That's literally, Ram Dass says we're all just walking each other home. What he meant to say is we all just want a little
We
treat,
all just want a little treat. Well said.
Where would you like listeners to find you? What would you like to plug here?
You can find me on Instagram at HKP McGregor. Um, and that's where you'll see outfits, mostly predominantly outfits. Predominantly you'll see my outfits. If you would like a more serious way to access my work, it's hannahmcgregor.com. I make a podcast called Material Girls that you should subscribe to because it's
Mhm.
really good and smart and fun and funny. And you can get Clever Girl at all the places that books are. Don't buy it
Fabulous.
from Amazon, please.
You know it. I got it at Book Warehouse, and it was the best.
Nice.
The lady at the counter was so excited about it. We were like, it was it's becoming a whole thing. So
Oh my god,
thank you
I'm
for being the
delighted to
spark for
hear
that.
it.
Yeah. One more time, Hannah, thank you so much. And just have yourself a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you so much. This has been really fun. I'm going to go buy some weed.
And that's it. Thank you once again to Hannah for joining me. It was such a treat to chat, and I'm feeling so deeply inspired, not only by their work, but with just how they're showing up in the world. Please get yourself a copy of Clever Girl. I've included a link to it in the show notes, and if you want to follow more of Hannah's work, you can check out the other links that are in those show notes as well. And if you'd like to support Friendless even more than you already are by listening, why not share the episode with your friends? Every little bit helps, and it would just mean the world to me if you would share this with somebody who you know would appreciate it. You can also sign up for the Substack, which I swear is coming back to a more regular schedule, so just please bear with me, sweet peas. It's coming. It's going to be a blast. I'm excited. I just haven't had enough time to actually sit down and do a real serious writing session with it. But it is coming, so sign up. It's free. All the links for that are in the show notes, along with all the rest. But that's going to be it this week, so let's leave things there. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to catch you back here next week with a brand new episode. But let's not worry about that right now, because that is then, and this is now. So for now, I'll just say I love you, and I wish you well. Fun and safety, sweet peas.